Welcome to the Marketing Millennials, the No BS Marketing Podcast. I'm Daniel Murray, and join me for unfiltered conversations with the brains behind marketing's coolest companies. The one request I tell our guests, stories or it didn't happen. Get ready to turn the up.
Find out what is really important to the executives and figure out a way that you can put yourself into a project that can help them meet their goal. Working alongside, leaders helps you grow, and it also gives them perspective as to the talent, within you, within the organization. But you just have to be very careful about when you advocate for yourself that you're speaking the right language.
Want to end the year on a high note? Impact.com helps marketers in retail, financial services, consumer goods, and B2B crush their goals well before the year ends. Talk about an ego boost. Use affiliate marketing, influencer campaigns, and customer referrals to finish 2024 strong. Check out impact.com/millennial today.
To the right person.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Marketing Millennials. Today, I have Cristy Garcia, the CMO of Impact.com, and we're going to have a cool conversation because we're going to talk about how to become a CMO. What does that path look like? I know a lot of you on here are probably trying to get to that path or trying to figure out how someone gets to that path. So excited for Cristy to dive in, but I'll let Cristy give her background of how she got into marketing, and then we can have the conversation.
Sure. Hi, everyone. And great to meet you, Daniel. I'm excited about this podcast. So marketing has been what I've always wanted to do for as long as I can remember. I know some people fall into marketing late in life. Maybe they joined the light side after being in sales for a certain number of years. But I know from the time I was in high school that this is what I wanted to do. And I studied and I've stuck with it ever since. And not just marketing, a very particular segment of marketing. It's B2B technology. So not always the most interesting and exciting in people's minds, but that's where you can really make a big difference as a marketer if you are creative, because you stand out quite a bit in the market. So excited to be here and talk more.
I want to first get started. I know that marketers' dreams are to become a CMO one day, but a lot of marketing paths aren't clear, like how do I become a CMO? So what are the key, let's say, experiences or milestones you need to hit to help you get to that stage?
So I think it's different for every CMO, but for me, it was very important to be a generalist and learn all facets of marketing disciplines. A lot of companies have small teams, right? Small marketing teams. And so if you're on one of those small marketing teams, you can be hired to do one thing, but you can end up writing all the content, planning all the events, working in product marketing, on positioning, competitive messaging, and things like that. So the good part about being a generalist is you do get to know a little bit of everything. And that kind of lends itself really well to management of a team too, because you have specialists on your marketing team. And having done a little bit of each role can be very helpful in not only knowing what good looks like, but in finding the right people to fill those roles on your team, knowing that they have the right skill sets. So I think that that's really important. But the other thing is, don't stay in the same place unless you're sure it's going to be a place where you're going to grow. That's a piece of advice that I got early on, and I was very grateful for it. If you feel stuck in a role and you've been there for a certain number of years and you're not getting the mentorship or the growth, don't stay. There's plenty of companies that will gladly take you and sort of bring you on their ride and journey, which could be a high growth journey for you. So I think for me, I would stay for a couple of years and kind of work my way up until I found a company that, after being a vice president at 3 different companies, finally decided that they were going to promote me into the C-suite. So it takes a while. You have to be sure that you want it. But I would say if anyone's kind of looking at their own career path right now and wondering about things that they can do, one thing that benefited me early on was learning how to advocate for myself and do it in such a way that, there's a fine line between confidence and cockiness, but doing it in such a way that it shows the value of what you do to the business versus look what I did. An example would be, if you're sharing a white paper with your executive team because it's something you're really proud of writing, or your manager is sharing it on your behalf, applying some context. Like, the content team really did their research. They looked at SEO, they looked at keywords, they looked at what people were searching for and what was driving them to the site. And they decided to write a piece that was emphasizing those keywords, talking specifically to our ICP. And because of it, we've seen, the performance of this many downloads that turned into this many leads. I mean, you really have to learn how to speak an executive's language. And what they care about at the end of the day is, what did that do to help the business? And I think once you learn how to speak that language and learn how to advocate for yourself, you move up rather quickly.
Yeah, one of the things I always say is marketing ops was one of my best things that I was in, because I got a taste of every part of the business, and then I learned how to talk about all the parts of the business. But also, I think you could talk to this a little bit, is like, becoming a CMO is not only learning marketing, it's actually learning how a business is run, because you're ultimately trying to hit business goals and marketing goals, and you have to be able to talk a business, not only marketing. So could you go into what are some skills you learned to improve to become better at those outside skills that aren't necessarily marketing?
Yeah, that was the biggest learning point for me, because once you've mastered your craft, that's only half the step. You have to run an internal PR campaign for yourself and for the team and for the work that you're doing. But I think sitting down with your CFO, even as a junior member of the marketing team, and understanding what's important to him or her, how they think about marketing, how they talk about marketing, how they decide budgets are set, and what the expectations are for return on investment. I think that won't be a waste of your time. I can tell you that every company I've been at, I've tried to befriend the CFO, not just because you necessarily need an ally in finance, which of course is very important, but because once you understand the business and what they're looking for, your work and the way that you talk about your work changes. And it will, depending on every new company or new CFO that you meet, because all companies, aren't looking for the same things. So I think spending a lot of time with executives, as much as you can, letting your manager know, hey, I want to be on a project where I can get some, visibility for the work that I'm doing. I think those are the ways that you can kind of get ahead and learn how to speak the business language instead of the marketing language. But I will say, and I saw this in a post and I wish I could recall it, but what I had to learn, and it was a very hard lesson for me, because I mentioned I was a VP at 3 companies. And when you're a VP, you are programmed to fight for your team. You are like, we're getting budget. Look at the great work my team is doing. Like, we need to continue on with this path to grow the business. And you're fighting for marketing. And when you become an executive, it's not the United Nations. You're not all sitting there kind of arguing for your own teams. You're talking about the good of the business. And I had to learn that. I mean, I actually had to be told, you're talking too much about marketing. You need to be thinking about the business. You're a CMO now. And it taught me, that was a very valuable lesson for me to learn. I wish I had learned it before I got to the C-suite, but it's one of those things, like, once you're programmed to do certain things at different levels, you have to unlearn behavior and you have to learn new behavior. So I don't think it hurts to be well-spoken. I don't think it hurts to have a nice stage presence if that's, the role that you're interested in. I think you become a spokesperson for the business. So you really have to understand it as a CMO. And like I said, talking to other executives and understanding that it's a little bigger than your team are 2 really easy ways to kind of grow in that area.
One question I have for marketers listening is, what are the differences of each role, going up from like manager to director to VP to CMO? Because they all have different nuances and different things you have to be good at. So could you give a little bit of what you have to be good at each
Yeah.
stage of your career to start climbing that ladder to get to CMO?
Sure. I would say as a manager, you're really refining your craft. If you are managing people as a manager, you might be a new manager. You have to learn all the mistakes that you make when you're a first-time manager. You have to learn how to manage each person differently, because each person is different. And I think as a manager, you're really discovering who you are as a business person. When you get to the director level, that's actually very senior in a lot of companies. People think of directors as VPs depending on the size of business. But a director, if you're talking about like a medium-sized business, I would say at that point you're on the leadership path if you're not already in leadership. So that's where you really start to understand how to advocate for yourself, advocate for your team. You're expected to be an individual contributor at the same time as a probably very busy manager, depending on, again, the size of your team and the responsibilities. As a VP, that's where that and the CMO line gets a little tricky because some companies decide they only need one, a VP or a CMO. So in my career, it was when I was a VP, the CMO was no longer there. So I was sort of doing both roles. So it's a hard question to answer. But what I do know as a VP is that you are still overseeing, the team's budget. Usually, you're still pretty hands-on, but you're expected to be representing leadership at a different level than when you were in as a director, and you're expected to be contributing to the business in other ways. What I say also is that as a VP, you need to be exemplary of the company's operating principles. Like you are the representation of leadership, and what you do has liability, right? At that point. When you're a CMO, CEO, CFO, again, it's very different. I can tell you some of the responsibilities I have now are things like market research, brand awareness tracking, like revenue, looking at, pretty much like any possible area of marketing. It's either being done by you or someone on your team. And so I think CMOs tend to get a little burnt out because ones who have come up through the ranks tend to be marketers themselves. It's very hard to let go of the work. You still want to do it as a CMO, but you really have to learn how to divide and conquer. You need to learn how to delegate really well. And if that's not your strong suit, then get that right when you're a VP, because you're not going to be able to do everything yourself when you're a CMO. So that's kind of how I would break it down.
One thing you said that I think is really important and I want to double down on is that if you are a marketer and just love doing the marketing, it probably might not be, CMO might not be the role you want to be in. So like you do, like, and that's what I think people misunderstand about the role of CMO is that you're doing less marketing than you think you're doing, and you're doing a lot of business activities. Right. So I think I want you to talk a little bit about that. Like sometimes CMO is not the right path, and that's okay, because if you want to keep doing marketing, maybe VP might be the right spot for you, or maybe something else might be the right spot.
Yeah. And especially those who are specialists. Like I know people who absolutely love writing. They want to write all day. They're passionate about writing. They study it. They should stay in writing. I mean, there's no reason why individual contributors can't also rise through the ranks and get respect from the organization. You don't have to actually even be a manager in that way. But if you really, I'd say, if you really love managing people and you love the business of marketing, and you like being asked, having a seat at the table and representing a section of the organization, like there's a lot of perks to being a CMO in that, you're not necessarily doing exactly the same level of work, but you're still involved in it. So I would say, don't let it scare you. If you are interested in being a CMO, but you love marketing, you'll still have an opportunity to do marketing if that's the case. But if you're, you don't like managing people, you find, executive conference room stuffy, you don't really like playing, internal politics and all the things like that. It's not for everyone. And I would say be very content and continue to grow your career no matter what level you are in the marketing organization, because you may change your mind one day, or you may get to the top and realize it wasn't for you, but you've learned all these skills all the way up, and really focusing on just getting better is probably the best way to think about it versus, what am I going to do, be a VP or CMO? Like just focus on getting to be the best marketer you can, learning to advocate for yourself and taking care of a team and helping them excel.
Yeah. One of the key things you're saying, and I want to double down on how you've done it, is advocating for yourself. Like what are some ways that I know there's ways of like talking about the metrics you're doing, but what are some specific ways that you can get in front of the right people so you can be seen as a valuable member in the organization?
Yeah. So I think when you're under leaders, it's often hard to kind of reach outside, right, and talk to others. But one of the ways that it's worked for me in my career is that when I was a director, I was able, because I was working on things that were important to the business, I was able to work directly with executives, and that was very helpful because they could see the work that I was doing and then kind of watch the work as time went on and as I grew in my career with the potential that I had as a director, let's say. But I would say the other way to advocate for yourself is when you are presenting something, speak the language of the person that you're presenting it to. You're not going to tell your CEO, I spent $50,000 and generated 20 MQLs. Like that's not the CEO's language. That's what you would tell to a marketer or to your manager. What you would say instead, let's say, is given the budget we had, we were able to convert this many users, and here's the impact to revenue. Here's the impact to pipeline. Point out that the company doesn't have a very good G2 presence, so you're going to take that on as a mission. The company maybe needs some work on branding, like do some branding stuff on your off time. Find out what is really important to the executives and figure out a way that you can put yourself into a project that can help them meet their goal. It's different for everyone, so it's very hard to be specific, but I do know that working alongside leaders helps you grow, and it also gives them perspective as to the talent within you and within the organization. But you just have to be very careful about when you advocate for yourself that you're speaking the right language to the right person. And the tiny vanity metrics that we might think are important, and they are important because it all matters, but you're not going to explain those sorts of things to the board. Think of yourself as, if I was a board member of this company, what are the things I would care about, and then focus on those things and advocate for yourself being part of projects to fix or help those things, if that's helpful.
Yeah, and I think one of the things you also said, which is a way to get to the CMO level, but is every has different needs, whether they might have a branding problem, they might have a revenue problem, they might have a positioning problem, whatever that is. And sometimes that's how someone gets to the CMO ranking, because they're the best product marketer that can help that company be positioned well, or they're the best revenue marketer or demand gen person ever, and that can help the growth of the business. This company's whole brand refresh, and they're the best at doing that. That might be, but sometimes becoming a CMO is like you said, is filling that business need that isn't existing in the business right now. They might be growing well, but their brand sucks. So their brand is amazing, but they're not growing well. So, I mean, being you, which you said earlier, of being a generalist, probably helped you a lot, because you could step in and be like, oh, I can fill out that product positioning need. Oh, I can fill out that branding need. Oh, I can fill out that growth need. So I just wanted to make that point too. Is like sometimes it's the need of the business, why you get
And
to
I
that.
would definitely, and I would also say, if you're ambitious, be honest. Say, I intend to grow in this organization. Like, I want to become the next vice president. I want your job, manager. Be aggressive and ambitious, and that will take you far. I think a lot of people are kind of content or maybe afraid to step outside their box or their lane, especially within organizations that feel really rigid. But it's never hurt to tell an executive or someone that you're reporting into that you have broader goals. And then most of the time people will try to help you, especially if you're in a good organization. They'll say, okay, what do you need to learn to get to the next step? And I have people on my team, and I respect them so much, because they come to me and they say, I want to be a VP one day. What do I need to learn? I think that that's really helpful to have that mentality that there are things to learn. And even if you have a specialty, or even if you're a generalist now, find other areas that you don't know about and become experts in them. Dig your heels in really, really deep, and find, the hole that needs to be filled. And once you do, I think you'll grow, and you'll grow your career.
What's up, marketing bestie? The holidays are coming fast. Are you ready? Impact.com helps thousands of retail, financial services, consumer goods, and franchise brands make the most of the season. Whether you want to grow your audience with influencers, scale revenue with affiliate marketing, or reward loyal customers with referral programs, Impact.com has the tools to help you succeed. Visit impact.com/millennials today and close out 2024 with a bang. That's impact.com/millennial. One question I had as well is when should those conversations start happening? So if I'm a manager and I want to become a director, I know a lot of the mistake I see a lot of people make is the conversation happens like, oh, I'm a year in, I want to get promoted, or I'm 2 years in. So when do you see that you need to start having this conversation to get to that level? How early should it happen?
I don't think it's bad to have it as soon as possible, but your expectations need to be realistic. And I think that's the concern. Just because you tell somebody that that's what you want doesn't mean it's going to happen at all or within your time frame. But letting people know you want more from them, you want more to experience. I do think that's respected, if not, kind of granted. And I don't think it hurts to say when you're a manager what your 5-year plan is or what your career path is, because managers are busy. I mean, we're all supposed to be thinking about our team's career pathing and what's best for them and how to help them grow. That's your job as a manager. But when you're doing so much work and you have deadlines, it's very hard to think about how can I make my team happy? How can I help them grow? So it does help when there's kind of like they say the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Like when there's someone kind of asking for it continually, like ask for it and see what you get. You won't get anything if you don't ask and be aggressive. So.
Yeah, I think that's another problem that you brought up, that managers fall into trap is they're just so good at advocating for their team that they forget to advocate for themselves. And that's something that is, and it's not and the reason you need a signal to your manager or whoever's the person ahead of you is because they need time to make that plan to also advocate for you internally. They need time to go to their hey, this person is doing great at their job. I want to get them to this level here. This is my plan for them. So you can be that, look at what, and then you can keep telling them, oh, look at how great this person's doing. Look at what they did here. So you can be their best advocate. But if the manager does not know what you want to do or your time frame or where you want to go, they don't know how to help you as a manager.
Exactly. I think being proactive goes a long way.
What do you think is the most important skills you learned, besides, I know we talked about advocating for yourself, but what are some key marketing skills that you think you learned that propelled you faster in your career?
Being a strong writer will help you in any role that you have. I would say, with AI and ChatGPT, quality content just becomes that much more important. If you're not already writing and practicing, start because you will stand out even if you don't stay in marketing. I've seen salespeople who are really strong content writers, and I respond to them because they're compelling, right? So it doesn't even matter if you stay in marketing or not, but I think writing takes you far because it's such a rare skill that someone is really good at writing. And then when you become a good writer, you can write on behalf of other people. One of the ways that I came up through the ranks was I was able to write on behalf of others. I was able to understand their voice and their, kind of their style of talking and even certain vocabulary that they use. and suddenly you're writing, articles for the CEO. Suddenly you're writing speeches for the CFO to give, or you're helping your CMO with her speech the next time she's on stage. And those are ways that you can really stand out. I would say content is one of them. The other, I would say, is just being super helpful to your colleagues, to people above you, to people below you. Like, make sure that you're a role model to those on your team, but that you're helping and you're not sort of staying in your lane so that you can go as far as you can, right? I think when you're learning from other people, when you're collaborating with other people in the organization, you create allies. But more than that, it feels good to do it, and you're learning something new. So I would say be very helpful, and at the same time, make sure you get your work done, but don't keep your head down and just finish what you need to do. Make sure that you're asking others to collaborate with you, and asking people if they need help. I think those are two things that really helped me.
I think another good point you just made right there is the ally part, and also not making allies on the marketing team, making allies on the sales team, making allies on the finance team.
That's
When
right.
a lot of people in the organization are talking great about you, that's a good sign that will help you get promoted. Because if
Definitely.
this person comes to your manager and says, "Oh, I love working with them," or this
Right.
person from finance says, "Oh my goodness, such a smart person to work with. They always help well," and sales tells you that, it's so much easier to build a case when the whole company loves you versus like you're just in your own lane doing great stuff, but nobody is advocating for you. It's
Yeah.
so much harder to get promoted that way.
Yeah. And I don't know if this is helpful to anybody else, but I always thought of myself, thought to myself, like, the world is hard enough. Like, work doesn't have to be that way. Like, you don't have to be mean and cutthroat and nasty and BCC people and do all this sneaky stuff to get ahead in organizations. Like, it's just, important to be authentic. When people are advocating for you, it does help your case. There's no one who's going to say, well, I really hate working with someone that everyone else really enjoys working with. I mean, it's important to be likable. But again, the world is hard enough. Like, you don't have to make it a difficult place to work for your colleagues and people around you. You can be helpful, you can be kind, you can be empathetic, and you can still go far at work. And that's one thing that, if I'm leaving any legacy at all, it's that I hope people can see that you can be authentic and empathetic and kind and helpful and still move up. You don't have to be undercutting and nasty and political to move ahead. You just have to find the right organization who values things like constructive criticism, right? And who values things like career pathing, and values things like honesty and teamwork. And if you're not in one of those places, I think you should try to find a place that is a healthy culture for you, because you can't separate personal and professional anymore, especially now people are working from home. So I do feel like the office, the workforce, your career should be a place of, joy. There's going to be stress, but it should not be a place where you're feeling beaten down or that people are against you. So I'd say just continue to be a role model, and people will, advocate for you on your behalf.
Yeah, you gotta like the people and the values the company's
Goes
putting
a
out.
long way.
You spending most of your life, most of your day at work. I wouldn't say most of your life, but most of your like week at work. So if you're not spending with people you want to hang out with, it makes it that much harder.
Yeah, and I would say too, when you are having a day and you get an email like that you think is rude, or someone slighted you somehow, just assume positive intent, and that's really helpful. Like, assume they meant well, that they weren't intentionally trying to hurt your feelings. And it just helps you respond in a better way when you're assuming that what they meant wasn't the worst way you could possibly read the email. And sometimes I'm having a bad day, and everything I read just sounds like someone's being negative, or someone's criticizing something that I'm working on, and then I step back and realize, like, this is all helpful feedback, and it's important to think of it as coming from a really good place. So, and it helps you be less defensive. Nobody wants somebody who's defensive. The best people that I know are the ones who say, I made a mistake. I'd like to let everybody know that I made a mistake, but I learned something from it, and I'm not going to make that mistake again. And that's a big quality in leadership that I think is lacking in some places and in some people. But being able to be humble is, in addition, something that's very important in a leader.
One of the last questions I have for you is that I love to ask everybody in this podcast is, what is a marketing hill you would die on?
Marketers need to experiment and fail safely. I don't know a single successful marketer that has done the same thing for 20 years. You have to be iterating, innovating, testing new tech, testing new methods, new strategies. And if you stay in your if you don't have experimentation, or you're afraid to try something new because there's consequences or repercussions for that, you're never going to meet your full potential. And so what I like to say is, on my team, it's like a soft landing. Like, it's okay. If you're not trying, that's when we have a problem. But everybody who tries something new, even if they fail, I consider that to be really successful, because again, they're learning and growing. And marketing is just one of these skills that I'm sure all your audience knows, and it's just constantly changing. So you have to change with it. But I would say, if you're not experimenting, testing, failing, you need to start doing that now, or else you're gonna stall your growth.
Yeah, and the playbook that worked at one company that you were at doesn't mean it's going to work at your next company and next company.
Definitely
And
not.
most of the time, it doesn't work, and that's why you have to test. Like, the foundations are not going to change, but like what you actually have to do to hit your goals are probably going to change, just because how fast marketing moves and how fast platforms move. But foundationally, it won't change. That's why, like, having those values, having the leadership, focusing on the audience, all the stuff you need to do to be great at marketing. But if you're trying to plug and play playbooks at each company, it's not going to work out really well for you.
No, it's not. It's not. Talk to customers, talk to prospects, listen to your sales calls, understand what people are searching for and asking for, and try some new things to answer those questions. And you'll grow, and you'll go far in your organization if you're stay curious. I would say, just stay very curious throughout your career.
The last thing I have for you is, where can people find you, follow impact.com, what you guys are doing, all that
Sure.
good stuff.
Sure. I am a LinkedIn junkie. I am always on LinkedIn. My name is Cristy Garcia. There's no H. It's Cristy. And if you drop me a message, I will definitely message you back. Also, check out impact.com. We're an affiliate marketing and influencer marketing and customer referral platform. We work with major brands down to mom and pop shops, and we help people find partners and grow through partnerships.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for sharing your story, your background, how you got into this space, how other people can learn from what you did. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And if I could say one more thing, we talked a lot about growth, and we talked a lot about growing into CMO, but someone told me something really special, and that's you're borrowing your title. So it doesn't belong to you. It belongs to your organization, and it can be given to someone else at any time. So remember that it does not define your worth, your role, and your title. But also remember that there's plenty of people who want that role and title also. So I think it's an important lesson to remember, to work hard, but to also remember that it does not define you, and you can't allow yourself to be kind of judged by just the title. It's a very binary way to view performance. And again, you're borrowing it. So.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who like judge their worth on what title they are at the organization, and I know people who are way better directors than a CMO that I know, and then I know someone who's a way better CMO than this person that I know. Like, it's just the best people I know don't think about it like, oh, I'm a CMO at this company. They're just like, oh, I CMO, but I also do X, Y, and Z. I do this, I do that, I do that. It's like, just part of their identity, right? A small part of their identity, not their identity. So,
That's right. Exactly right.
thank you so much.
Thanks, Daniel. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for listening. Keep tuning in to hear more great insights from the coolest marketers from around the world. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and follow the Marketing Millennials podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you hear, I would greatly appreciate you giving us a 5-star rating. It helps bring more marketers into our community.